Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Parenthood. If you're listening to this while commuting, or cooking, or lying down after a long day, thank you for letting us this conversation sit beside you for a bit. Parenthood is where we talk about parenting as it really is, full of love, contradictions, exhaustion, meaning, and growth. Today's episode is about building things at the same time: a child, a relationship, a business, a sense of self, often across time zones, continents, and emotional distances. My guest today is Supriya. She is building a business, raising her 3-year-old daughter Samara, and has recently spent several months solo parenting while she and her partner were in different parts of the world for work. She calls motherhood a deeply spiritual experience, and she speaks with a lot of gratitude about her village, the people who have made it possible for her to hold everything she's holding. Supriya, I'm just so glad you're here. Thank you for trusting this space and for being here.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for having me.
To begin with, I want to meet you in this moment as you are today. If you had to describe yourself right now, this version of you in 3 words or phrases, what would they be?
Uh, Zombie, fueled by coffee right now. Extremely grateful for everything that I have and super inspired.
Lovely, lovely. And l- l- I want us to get a little poetic. If your life was a book, what would this chapter be called?
You mean the chapter of motherhood, or is it like or the space?
Whatever you want to understand it as.
I think I joke about this decade being like the messy middle, right? Like somewhere in this whole
Yeah.
spectrum of like life where everything's happening at once, and there is career aspirations, and your career is like taking a direction right now which you really want to kind of nurture. There is relationship that you've had for a while now, you've been investing in it, and then that's taking a new turn because you are rediscovering your partner. And then there's motherhood, and there's just a whole lot of other things happening to your body, to your health, to your all of those commitments, right? So it's a crazy time. So it's like the messy middle.
And before we go further, can you introduce us to your little world, your partner, your child, and what life looked like on an ordinary day?
Well, we're living as a family right now. We're living in slightly extraordinary times because we are split across two continents. We're splitting our time across Bangalore and the Bay Area in the US, because both me and my husband were building businesses, and for different reasons, we have to be in two different countries for now. But that's also fun because we are essentially like at the heart of it, like no two nomads.
Mm-hmm.
Before we had our daughter, lived like really like nomads. We didn't have a place for 2 years
Wow.
before I found out that I was pregnant, because we were living 2 months in Goa, 2 months in Oroville, 2 months in US and Costa Rica. So we spent our life just like one vacation at a time. We both know each other from college.
Yeah.
We started dating much later, and because we realized that we both had very similar values, very similar vision in terms of how we want to live our life, and we got married in 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And after that, it was uh, a beautiful time for us. I mean, I know the world was going through so much, but we actually got a lot of time together. And
Yeah.
we moved to Bangalore in June of 2020, which is what we started calling home, but we still were all over the place. And 2022 is when we decided that, okay, we want to um, expand our family. And before we thought we will go to a place, find a house, settle down, it just happened. So I
Yeah.
found out about it I had a hunch when I was in Costa Rica, and I found out about it when I was in US. And then like life just changed suddenly. Then we were like, let's find a home, move back to Bangalore. Had a beautiful daughter who's 3 now. It's surreal to even imagine this. She's a full, like, little human who's
Yeah.
able to walk and talk and have her opinions. It's almost like raising a teenager right now. And yeah, we live in Bangalore and US for now. So the current situation's a little tricky. I don't know anybody else who's doing this.
Yeah.
We also like it because we spend our summers in the US and we get a different. My daughter loves it there. She gets different exposure. Plus, when she comes back to Bangalore, she has her own like routine that she also loves. It takes time to settle
Yeah.
the first few weeks on both sides. But we also think it's great exposure for all of us as a family.
Yeah.
Uh, in the especially in the early years for Samara. So it's been crazy.
Yeah. 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 And tell us something about Samara, how she is, what kind of a person she is growing up to be.
I don't know. Every day I feel like I discover a very different like thing about her that I did not know before.
Yeah.
We She is like a little guru. I sometimes feel like I completely follow her lead on things. Like I ask her something and I actually just like I'm like, okay, you decide. She is extremely opinionated, extremely kind and compassionate. Like I couldn't have done this whole phase of solo parenting without that part of her personality who comes and checks in on me. And if I'm not okay, she
Oh.
senses it. And it's been like that. She's been pretty sensitive and also perceptive about things. So my journey of like telling her that I won't be able the weaning journey when I stopped breastfeeding was like, hey, mama won't be breastfeeding you from tomorrow. Like, this is, and she could sense I was very sad because I actually didn't want to wean, but I felt the timing was also right. And she just hugged me and she'll be like,
Oh.
it's okay. And that's it. She never asked for milk ever again. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't expect this because I
Yeah.
expected you to fight back or to cry. And I think that day I realized, and which is why I said it's such a spiritual journey for me because from her conception to her birth, and like even now, like I feel I learned from her so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's she's extremely into conversations a lot, so she would love to be chatty. She was an early talker, so she started framing sentences at like 18 months, and we got into conversations at the age of 2. And like for the last 1 year it's just been like different conversations
Yeah.
every day. So it's just extremely it's extremely fun, and it's a privilege to be raising a daughter, I feel. So
Yeah.
I feel very, very blessed to have her.
Sounds beautiful. And you've also been very open about the fact that you've had ups and downs, especially in the postpartum phase with your partner, and that you've come out stronger. Mm, I want to understand from you what were some of the hardest moments in that early phase?
Yeah. I feel like I did not know any of this. Like, I didn't know anything about postpartum, honestly, except for the fact that uh, most women have and go through postpartum depression, for which I planned and I had a therapist. Uh, Even before I had a baby, I had a relationship with a therapist, and I didn't realize that there will be more layers to the roles we'll play in world. But I was actually very surprised to know that a lot of other women also had this, but then these were not the conversations that anyone was having, right? Because it's
Right.
also a very personal matter and no one would want to talk about it. But I started talking about it because I also realized that it's very normal to have two people who suddenly have this new shared responsibility and who have grown up with different value systems. And it's one thing to be married and to coexist because you're still
Yeah.
individuals, but now you have like a very important we have important decisions to make on an everyday basis which could impact our daughter, and then that just led us to question a lot that we believed in, right, and explore. So I think we had our ups and downs, and even now that we were doing this long distance for a while, it wasn't easy at all. Um, but we've come out stronger. I think the first year, I think when the sleep was a bit better, that's when I think our conversations were more like constructive.
Yeah.
And even after this 7 months of long distance, I felt like there were like many ups and downs because there were two different time zones. It's a crazy, US and India is a crazy time zone wise. You're both, either it's early morning or it's late night, and both times you're like so
Yeah.
occupied with like your own things. So it's been hard, but what has kept us going is um, rediscovering each other in different phases of life and aligning on just the core values, because the way we do things will be different always.
Yeah.
But as long as we are aligned on a core value and how we want to raise our daughter, which also keeps changing, these conversations keep changing.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, it's been I think postpartum has definitely been hard, not just for me, but also for my husband, because the hormonal roller coaster impacts the two of us, the both of us. And no one prepared me for this. I did not know that this would happen as well, because you have a little bit of a rosy picture somehow,
Yeah.
because our generation of like men who are very hands-on in their approach to parenting, but we still expect a lot more.
Yeah.
So there is that they have taken a leap from the previous generation to an extent, but there's so many things where we see a stark inequality, right? Like we are biologically wired differently, our brains work differently, and sometimes I'm just jealous of a dad brain. I'm
Yeah.
like, why are there so many tabs open in my head? And how can like, men just think very differently, right?
Yeah.
I feel there's a lot of richness in having that, like having two very different approaches, because that makes it a fun, that
Mm.
makes it also very wholesome in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have realized that instead of fighting the differences which exist in how our brains work,
Mm.
essentially, if I could just leverage the strengths and the weaknesses, right? When I feel that I'm exhausted in terms of thinking and planning these things, I try and like now I have systems to like figure out how can we do this better.
Yeah.
So it took us, I mean, we're still figuring it out, but it took a very long time to realize this is normal
Yeah.
for two people to kind of go through this. And
Mm.
the reason I was very vocal about it, even like at 3 months postpartum, that hey, like no one warned us about how difficult it could be on our marriage. But what kept us also going was like, hey, remember it started with the two of us,
Yeah.
and let's just go back to the foundation. And I really feel we all need to talk about it more openly,
Yeah.
to be able to, like you said, these conversations need to be a part of the mainstream.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And also along the way, were there moments of resentment, of longing, or of, surprising strength you found along the way?
Yeah, I think for sure, especially the resentment in the first 3 months, right? Like because you're doing so much, physically,
Yeah.
body is doing so much. You've gone through a birth, you're going through so much of a journey physically, and then you realize that like it doesn't change much for a man in terms of their own like body, right? And that's when it starts like the starts feeling very different in how it took me a very long time to adjust and feel like myself in my own body. And you realize that sometimes you feel like, is nature sexist? And that's how the resentment bit
Yeah.
started. But I also feel that it's also like in my case, it was very hormonal.
Mhm.
It lasted for about like 6 months or 9 months, and then once I started feeling like myself, it got a lot better.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And you've also said that your parenting journey has been relatively smooth and that it's been deeply spiritual for you. How did you feel about motherhood when it actually happened, when you conceived your daughter and when you gave birth to her?
Sometimes I feel like it could also sound like too romantic a tale.
Yeah.
Uh, but it happened like that. We were in Costa Rica and we started talking about our plans. And we used to do these forest walks. And we decided that we both were in on a sabbatical that time. And hence we had the mind space to think and talk about it. And we decided, and I just told the universe that I'm ready.
Hmm.
And literally the next day I was pregnant.
Oh.
And I did not expect that to happen so soon because I'm like, yeah, okay. I really thought that I'd take some, because I was towards the end of my sabbatical. So I really had these goals because I was traveling so much. I was eating out. I'm like, I want to get healthy first and like, and then conceive. But like none of that. Like it felt like Samara was there listening, waiting for us to get ready. And like, boom, it just happened. Um, and when throughout the pregnancy, I touch wood, I had an easy pregnancy. The only challenge was I had COVID towards the end of my first trimester. That made me extremely tired, and there was a lot of fatigue. But I was also setting up a new house. I had a full-time job, so it was also very hectic
Yeah.
in general. But apart from that, I felt like even the birth was extremely like I'm very grateful for that birthing experience because it was extremely easy on me, and it just felt like she slipped through my through my body and came out very it was extremely spiritual and experience, very hard to put it in words, and yeah, it just that taught me that I felt like I also invested also a lot more in my pregnancy in going for my meditation retreats, in yoga, and hence I was able to like switch off my brain during
Yeah.
labor, and I was just able to like tell my mind that it's not your job, the body knows how to do this and let it do it, and I felt like that was a very deeply surreal experience because it doesn't happen that often that your mind switches off.
Yeah.
And it happened for me for those few moments. I don't even know, like, were they minutes, were they hours, were they moments?
Hmm.
But my doula told me this later that you were in a state of trance. There was extreme silence. There was this music going on that you had chosen. And like the birth happened where all of us were like just watching and no one
Wow.
had to do anything. And I have that video she recorded of birth, and like I go back to it so many times because it reminds you of this power that you
Hmm.
have. So it reminds, and it still does. Like I feel extremely powerful when I see that.
Yeah.
So, touch wood, I had an empowered pregnancy and empowered birth, and that um, like just it was a good start.
Yeah.
And breastfeeding, I know again a lot of people struggle, a lot of mothers struggle with it, but again it was Samara who just did that birth crawl and latched, and
Hmm.
that to me was again like a phenomenon of nature that we often like we don't really have to do much, I
Yeah.
feel. The
Yeah.
more we withdraw, the easier it gets sometimes. So it felt like I didn't like she had this birth crawl, and I had only read in theory about it, and I really honestly did not think it was practical or possible. But it happened, and it felt extremely empowering to see nature take its course, and it deepened my relationship with nature in some ways. All conceiving and delivering and having that birth experience just deepened. And that's how I met a beautiful, like a wonderful pediatrician who also sort of then understood our philosophy and was also had a similar approach to how she was looking at Samara. I was lucky to have a pediatrician who used to come home for me. I don't know
Oh,
how that
wow.
happened. She just offered. She's like, you know what? I can come home and do all the vaccinations. And we were like, wait, what just happened? So the first 6 months, all the vaccinations happened at home. And after that, I told her that, hey, you know what? Now I can step out. I just feel bad
Yeah.
calling for one of this. I just feel like we just got extremely lucky. throughout like this experience. But what felt extremely hard was this hormonally like navigating the first years, especially when you're sleep deprived.
Mhm.
That and I was doing a full-time job. I was back to work at 5.5 months, and my job is very external in nature, so I had to do a lot of external work, and I couldn't do travel because I was breastfeeding, and that frustrated me a little bit because I expected, I don't know why, it was a very stupid expectation to have
Yeah, yeah,
place. I
but
expected,
you don't know better.
yeah, you don't know better. And now that I look back at that year, I'm like, I should have been a little bit kinder to myself. And people were telling me this. By the way, no one's expecting you to do this, but there were these expectations out of myself.
Yeah,
So I've always been that person that if I have this one metric and if I'm not performing in, so to say, I'm not delivering, right?
yeah,
And I was the one who went up to my management. I'm like, I want to quit my job. And they went through this whole exercise of trying to retain me and trying to tell me that, you know what, you're doing well, take more time off. And so I was lucky to be in a company, Procter and Gamble, which is the job I had back then. They were extremely accommodating of how I want to run this. But no, irrespective of the policies and like support system that was being offered, the world doesn't honestly care.
yeah,
So while the policies exist on paper, but you still are in a very competitive world. And
yeah,
it felt like maybe this is not how I want to work anymore. While I had a dream role, I was leading sustainability and it across like the region, and I felt it was such a meaningful job. But I wanted more out of my work and out of my job, and it was very counterintuitive for a lot of people who heard me say this. But I said that I want to quit because I want to start my own business. And they said like, but now is the time to, be in a comfortable role and job where you can actually like have this work-life balance. But that balance didn't feel like much of a balance because I wanted my time away from my daughter, especially if I was traveling, to be worth it, to be
yeah.
meaningful. And then I'm like, let me take a pause and redesign my life because something has changed in me, and I don't feel like on paper it's all great. Uh, but as a person, I feel like something has changed. I have changed, so I need to reassess. I took like a month off. I went to Bali and I came back. I went to Bali when my daughter was a year old. So we
Wow.
did that 1 month there, and then I came back and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for a new chapter of my life.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about that, you have traveled with her extensively. Tell us about that. Tell us about that experience. Of course, straddling two continents and then traveling with her extensively. How has that been? And how has that been? I don't want to call it easy and,
Yeah.
just do it
Yeah.
away with, but how has it been?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it easy. Nothing is easy. But traveling, like I said before, we had Samara. We were nomads. We were doing these extended staycations of 2 months in different places. And even though it wasn't like a planned that we will travel so much with her, there was never this plan. But we both are the kind of people who like to travel and who like
Yeah.
to be on the go. And we decided to, it was also like a lot of need-based travel a lot of times. So, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Thailand with Samara. It was a work trip.
Yeah.
And my husband was supposed to join, but he couldn't make it. So I decided that, you know what, I want to still continue. And I want her to see that, work is fun and it's taking me places. And she should also have this idea. And when I met my team there in Thailand, they were like, you're really doing this, right? Like, because how are you doing this? But I had my sister who, like I said, like having that village is
Yeah.
important. My sister who joined us to help me with those few days when I was in meetings all day long. But then I also had like this time with my daughter post my work days where
Yeah.
we were on the beach, We were in the pool, and she enjoyed it, and I feel like it's also part of like those core memories. I don't think she'll remember it also, but maybe I will. And it was important for me. It was important for me that she sees me work and she
Yeah.
sees me play.
Yeah.
And that is why I took her along to Thailand it was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Like when I thought about it, it just felt heavy. I'm like, why am I adding so much work? But I also uh I- knowing her personality, and I think a lot of this is very knowing your child and knowing their personality and then planning things around it. I knew she'll have a blast. And like I said, like on the way back, it was a 3.5 hour long flight, and it was just the two of us sitting. She didn't need a gadget. She didn't need
Hmm.
a toy. She just had one soft toy with her, and she was doing some imaginary play for 3 hours. We didn't talk. She
Wow.
played for an hour. She napped for an hour and a half. I was like, reading something, listening to something. So I also feel that this didn't happen. It also
Hmm.
took so much of travel and exposure for her to like feel so comfortable in a plane now. So given
Yeah.
a choice, she would love to live on a plane now.
Yeah.
So we've done extended travel because I we also realized this, that every time we came back from a travel, I could see like there's something in her brain that has changed.
Yeah.
And we noticed this multiple times, even when we did smaller trips, that there was some milestone, there was some developmental leap that happened that we could notice. So we also felt like Samara as a child enjoys travel, and we as a family should do more of that. So we did a month in Bali when she was one, a month in Europe when she was 1.5. We did 2.5 months last year in US. Now we're again going for 3 months to the States, and we did like multiple smaller trips with her. And she loves it. She loves to be on the plane. She loves to sort of go to new places, and we're enjoying it. So we really think I wouldn't have had it any other way. And our work also requires us to travel.
Yeah.
It's so funny that I quit my job because it was a regional role. I had to also travel so much, and I'm like, I don't think I want to travel so much for work. I quit it, and yet in whatever new, I have attracted a lot more travel anyway with my work. So uh, I still travel. It's just that now that I do my own thing, I can decide and I have a lot more flexibility
Yeah.
on when and where and how, which brings a lot more ease to traveling with a toddler and child. So it's not been easy, especially the first couple of years when you are traveling with a child. It takes a lot of adjustment. It's hard work. Me and my husband were like, this is like just relocation. It's not a vacation, but we have thoroughly enjoyed those exhausted travel days also. So and we're looking forward to doing more of that with her.
Love it. And what's fascinated me so much about our conversation earlier is that you've called Samara your guiding spirit. So tell me about that. What does she mirror back to you about yourself? What do you love about that? And how is she your guiding spirit?
Yeah, I feel it's I was telling this to a friend the other day that the the scary thing about being a parent is that they're watching you all the time. So it's been that journey. Like I feel like it's a lot of inner work that
Mm.
I started doing as an individual, even during my pregnancy. Um, I'll tell you an experience. So I used to do Vipassana very often. I used to go every year for a 10-day retreat. And I planned one when I was pregnant as well. And I used to meditate, and I used to get this hot flashes. And I never got hot flashes throughout my pregnancy. So before and after Vipassana, I never had it. Only for those 10 days when I was meditating, I used to sit where there was AC and there was fan and there was nobody around me because it used to be freezing cold. But I used to sit there and like meditate, and I used to still be sweating. And I spoke to my Vipassana teacher about it, and then she gave me some guidance around like why this happens. And it made me realize that this is an opportunity to also sort of work on your own self. It's pregnancy is something that I felt was extremely spiritual, and which is why I feel like my daughter's writing her story. I'm just observing it and watching it unfold. I didn't realize I'll get pregnant like while I was traveling, right?
Mm,
Although it was an intention we had set, but it just happened so quickly. I didn't decide I wanted a water birth. It was
mm,
just like it wasn't available as an option. I entered and she came in. So I felt after multiple such events, and we talk about nature versus nurture so much. Um, I truly believe that like there's only so much nurturing, but there's a lot of like that nature that comes to play. So learning from that nature of that child has helped me again be a little bit more present, not just for her but for also myself.
yeah,
And throughout, I feel like you're looking at the world through their lens, and it's magical sometimes to sort of be have that point of view.
yeah,
Uh, when you see the world through her eyes, it looks so different. And all the other layers that we have sort of over time accumulated, I feel like, it sometimes help you peel them off and like work on yourself and work on um, do that inner work that your child makes you do. Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but
that does, that does. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah,
And
so it's been like a lot of reflections, and it's been like a lot of like, hey, I didn't know this about myself, but when I had this situation with Samara and there was a tantrum, and like I'm finding out so much more about myself, like the good things, the bad things. You discover your own like shortcomings, and you always thought that you were a patient person, but like I'm like, oh my God, I'm not patient at all, because the time she's taking to like put her shoes on, I'm just waiting. I'm like, okay, it's 7 minutes, but I cannot, like, the modern parent in you does not want to like rush her and all of that also. So it's teaching me just so much patience, and I think that's the growth that I feel parenthood has brought for me, that like I'm growing in ways I never imagined I would grow.
wow, wow. And let's talk about solo parenting, especially in the context of, your ambitions and responsibility. For almost more than a year, you were solo parenting, mostly on your own while also launching your own business. What
Yeah,
did what did that actually look like? Not in just terms of, like an umbrella picture, but a day-to-day logistical,
yeah,
reality.
yeah. So I was in US. My husband was in US for 9 months, of which 7 months I was in India, and we were not together. So it's 7 months of solo parenting. The first month was hard. It like literally broke me, because when I came back, we both were very sick.
Mhm.
I think it was COVID, and we had never seen her this sick. And we came back to an empty house. She is used to having her grandparents, and her grandparents also not there, and her father wasn't there. So she came back to an empty house. We were both sick, and my husband's grandparents were also not keeping well. So I was shuttling between two homes in Bangalore, because we were figuring out some things for them, figuring it out for my daughter. So it was an extremely messy first 1 month, and she was not settling in school. Um, and then I just told my parents that, guys, I need you now. And thanks to them, I think I'm extremely blessed um, for that village who showed up for me. So my mom, my dad, my sister, and my house help, my nanny, like I wouldn't have been able to do anything without them. So I think I owe so much to this village who helped me. So sometimes when I say solo parenting, I also feel that no, there were many people co-parenting.
Yeah.
But obviously the child needs you.
Yeah.
As the primary caregiver, especially in times of when only you can hold that space
Yeah.
when they're sick or when they have a tantrum and when they are going through a difficult emotion, that I don't think like grandparents and nanny can step in that moment. So that's the hard
Mm.
part, that you are the good cop and the bad cop, and mostly the bad cop, because
Yeah.
grandparents can be the good cop, and like but you have to be the bad cop, yet have that bond, hold that space so that they feel comfortable coming and telling you everything about
Yeah.
school, what's not going well, and all of that. So Samara's very vocal. She's able to articulate her emotions really well, and she's also very emotional. So she needs that holding space a little bit more, I feel, sometimes as a child, because she thinks about things and she processes, and she'll come back, and during bedtime she'll ask me like a gazillion questions about why this person did this thing, why was she felt bad about this. So she has a lot of those complex emotions that come out during bedtime, and you're extremely exhausted, and you're like, okay, I have to be patient and I have to give these answers, and only I can give this answer. Like, usually if Kunal was here, I would have just
Yeah.
can you handle these? Um, so I think it wasn't easy for sure, but it was a decision we both made that made sense for us from a work standpoint. Well, the difficult part was also not knowing how long he will be there, because he was going through his own green card process. So till he gets his green card in the US, he couldn't travel. So that was the hard part, not knowing when he can travel,
Yeah.
and that he couldn't travel and was stuck in US for that long. Um, but I feel honestly like, um with my parents around and with the support system that was built over years, um, it it wasn't as hard as it sounds.
Yeah.
So I feel like in the first month, because a lot of my friends found out about it and they were like, "Oh my God, how are you going to do this?" I think it was sounding a lot harder. But once the systems were in place after a month and a half, it became like easy.
Mm-hmm.
I had to make adjustments. For example, I used to work out and go to a gym, but I couldn't do that. So I had my trainer come home, because you need to be around
Yeah.
at home a lot more. And my business suffered a little bit, because the pace I had in mind, I wanted to do a launch in November, but it was delayed by 2.5 months. Uh, Things were slower, which sometimes frustrates you, right? Because sickness will come in the way, and then you're like there holding the child, and your
Yeah.
travel gets pushed because something has come up and you need to be at home. So it wasn't ideal. I don't recommend it, but I also feel that it's possible. And a fellow mom gave me this advice a couple of months ago, that she had actually done something similar, and she has two kids. And she's like, you know what, in your parenting journey, this 6 months, 7 months that you were thinking it would take will be a very small fraction, and you'll
Yeah.
forget about it after and she did it like 5 years ago, and she's like, honestly, it was hard, but I don't remember a lot of that anyway. So it's a small fraction.
Yeah.
That made me step back and look at the bigger picture, because both of us had taken this decision to be in different countries
Mm.
and shuttle in between in two countries. And it was because it was important for both of us. We are both very ambitious. We're both building businesses. So for two entrepreneurs to be doing this, it was important for us to be happy, to be able to be happy
Yeah.
parents, Samara. Um, yeah, it was hard, but I'm glad he literally last night, Kunal got back, and I'm literally like, okay, bye. It's my time to take off. I'm going for a retreat now. I'm like, I need 7 days off. I'm working on my health. I'm going for a retreat alone. And I'm like, wow, it was hard, but it also empowered me in some ways, where you feel if you can do this,
Yeah.
you can do a lot more.
Yeah.
And trust me, um, for anyone else who thinks this is so hard, I feel that your body adapts, your mind adapts. We are extremely resilient, we're extremely adaptive as beings. It took me a month and a half, but we all got used to that rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal, but it worked out.
Yeah.
And here we are, and we've met our goals that we had for the last 7 months, and we're back together. So we are happy now. Hopefully. But we'll continue to do this for another 2 years, is what we have in mind, which will be mostly till Samara goes to school. We will be traveling a lot more and shuttling between like these countries, and then decide,
Yeah.
depending on our situation, as to where we would want to be based, so that then she has like a base
Full.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, for a few years where we're rooted in one place. But till then, we are like, you know what? It's time for us to explore. It's time for us to experiment, and like, let's do it. Let's continue experimenting.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds wonderful. And I love how you speak about your village. You speak with so much of gratitude, so much of intention. You speak about them. I want to know from you, because a lot of heavy lifting in parenting is done by the parents. And the support can only do so much. It's a support, it's not parenting as such. So, what kind of support or help mattered the most to you in this time? Practical, emotional, invisible kind of help?
Yeah. So, I feel like, and I'm saying, I still feel that I come, it's a privilege to be like around this system that we chose to also build for our family. I grew up in a nuclear setup. The first 5 years I was in a joint family setup because the first 5 years of my life were in a village.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in a nuclear setup, five plus. And I somehow remember this, that I remember my mother being a little bit stressed when we were in this nuclear setup. And I remember that I had a lot of people around me, so it was easier for my parents also because we were in the. So I somehow have those very vague memories of being carried by, like, my cousins were taking me or my uncle was taking me, and I was just out of the house most of the time as a child. And that made me and my husband also think, and we both felt this, that, like, we made that choice, that we actually requested our parents to live with us, because we wanted that for our daughter. And we felt like my mom came and stayed with me for the first 6 months, 7 months, and then she went back home, to our hometown. And then I just felt like something wasn't right. Like, I felt that system wasn't working for me. And then I called her back, and then there was a lot of back and forth because we were figuring out that arrangement. It took a lot of work to also build that setup.
Yeah.
Without knowing, and to answer to your question about like what support did you need, honestly, if you ask me, I had a cook, I had a nanny full time who was living with us, I had a help who was a cleaner. It was me and my husband. So there was no baby care work for which we needed extra pair of hands. We just needed that to an extent because we felt like, from an emotional standpoint, to hold space for me, because I felt safer with my parents around for some reason, because I've always associated their presence with like a lot of safety, and that's just how growing up I felt around them.
Yeah.
And I wanted that sense of safety to continue for both me and my daughter. And I felt, and I could sense that. Like, she was obviously like around grandparents, like kids are a little bit, there's a different dimension to emotional intelligence that develops with grandparents being around, because the stories that they tell, or like, there's a different dimension which I feel like me and my husband, no, with our busy lives, we will not be able to give that to our daughter, right? So it took us a lot of work to be able to set that village up and figure out systems that, because we were navigating four generations almost,
Yeah.
together. So even now, if you go out to a restaurant, you have to like consider like four different generations with four different tastes and eating habits to figure out like where to go as a family, right? So it's also, I want to also talk about that it's not always very easy,
Yeah.
because it comes with a lot of responsibility towards that village also, right?
Yeah.
Because my house help is a part of the village, and as much as she's taking care of us, we also have to take care of her if there's something wrong. And there's so many times when this happens, and you have to show up for them as
Yeah.
well. So it works both ways, and I feel that even for my parents, I could sense that they were happier around Samara. And when they go back home, they obviously like they're empty nesters, right? So when they go back home, they actually really miss. And I could see that my mom felt a lot more happier around. So we just said that, like, you know what? It's meant to be this way. It's meant to be to be taking care of aging parents as well as kids, and it just all works beautifully together when all of us are together. So it took a while in building it, and the need, how it helped me was they didn't. My daughter goes to a preschool. She's been going to a preschool since she was 15 months old. So she goes there, she comes back, she naps, and then there's park time. So park time is what my parents or grandparents love. Like they love taking her out to the park because it gives them outdoors time. She gets outdoors time. I get time to do my work. So it's that because knowing that she's with them just feels like I don't even have to
Great.
think. I don't have to think when I have to leave the house. And when I come back and after Samara sleeps, I sit with my parents sometimes and I talk to them about my day. And I like that. Like, I like having those multiple conversations which are very different in the house. Sometimes I'm working and then I can hear my daughter giggle and like my dad and like they're doing something. And it's just so nice to have a house where it's just like this, there's this laughter, there's this chatter that's going around. And I felt like happier in this setup.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, this again is not like it's not something that we see a lot in the modern world around me. So I have been asked this question that like, how do you do this? How do you live with your parents? How does this work, right? Because it's also because they've moved to Bangalore from Akola, which is near Nagpur, and it's new for them. So I also sort of make it a point that I take them around, and they also have now a social kind of network and social groups here. They have their routine here. They have their parks that they go to for their own me time. And we all have this rule in the house. We all, including Samara, we all get our me time where we are just us, where we are not stimulated for some time, right? And
Yeah.
my father jokes about this that this way we all are doing like 20% of the work, and we don't really feel that that this was too much. So I feel that this just felt very natural
Yeah.
uh, to have the setup for us, and it's been working well. And I know this is a privilege, and I'm extremely grateful, to my parents, my sister, and my house help, and my nanny who literally runs my house. And she's been with me for 2 years, and she is family. I don't think we can like live. Sometimes I joke that she's raising me
Yeah.
as as much as she's raising my kid. So extremely grateful to be having that setup, without which it would have been a lot harder to do what we're doing right now. Because I launched a business, it was intense. It's still intense, but having people I felt that I could trust blindly was a game changer in my parenting journey to be a lot more relaxed parent.
Yeah. 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 And you talked about launching your business. So tell me, what kind of example do you hope Samara grows up seeing through your work?
Yeah, so I've always felt and I've always questioned like my decision to start out around this time in my life. I've been an entrepreneur before, and I know what that feels like. And this was in my early 20s when I had a lot more energy and a lot more time, and like I was completely different as a human being. I could pull off like 19-20 hours of work. I remember doing that also. And I don't think I can do that now. I need my 8 hours of sleep every day.
Yeah.
Um, and then you need like your connection time with your daughter, and you need like, and I also want a little bit more quantity. I've heard this so much that quality over quantity, but I don't know. I'm very greedy when it comes to like my time with my daughter. I'm like, no, I need these many hours, and that's my goal. And then I designed my work around what mattered to me.
Hmm.
Um, so talking about like the work and the business bit, I felt like it again was a part of discovering myself again. Took me 2 years to fully launch after I quit my corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
So in these 2 years, I did multiple gigs. I did consulting work, I worked with founders, I did pro bono work. I did a lot of things to eliminate what I did not want to do. So
Mm.
it was an exploratory time. And it's also a very difficult time because you don't really have an anchor and then you're like figuring out so much, so many things. But launching and coming to this point and launching a business was was something that I feel that, looking back was one of the best decisions. Because she asks me almost every day, like, why are you going to work? And I tell her, like, because I love working. And I tell her, like, how you love playing, how you love going to school. I love to go to work. And I feel that although it's a very hard time to be an entrepreneur from a just purely like the timing of it, I like the fact that when she sees me working, she also sees that I'm enjoying this
Yeah.
work. And I think that made working a lot more joyful as well. Like I'm being pulled to my work because it's something that I'm doing with a lot of um like passion. And it again, this was one of the gifts of postpartum that I got this very strong hunch in my second month postpartum that I wanted to build in health.
Mm.
And I've been having this thought like since 10 years. But because I was in a very different industry and a different sector, it just felt foolish to be able to like switch. But the hunch I had, and I spoke to so many people about it, and then they also felt like, you know what, we don't know, like, is this something you really want to do? But I had such a strong gut feeling since 2 months postpartum till like 2 years postpartum that I'm like, okay, I need to listen to my gut and launch this now. I had that sense of urgency somehow. And I'm building in health tourism. So I'm helping people who are coming from all over the world to discover their own healing journeys and to discover like dentists and doctors, etc. when they come to India or go to other countries from a health tourism standpoint. And it actually combines two things that I feel very passionate about, which is travel and which is health. And I'm also doing some research in deep tech in healthcare space. And it's about how in 10 years or 15 years from now, like what would human health look like? So I'm getting my breadth and my depth through these two different types of work that I'm doing through work. And my daughter is too young to understand what I'm doing. But just the fact that when she looks at me and when she looks at me working and I'm working with like a lot of joy and a lot of passion, it gives me like some sense that maybe she'll like remember this in some fleeting moments and realize that like no, this is fun. Like I don't even know what work would look like 20 years from now, and
Yeah.
will there be any work to do, or will AI do everything for us? But I feel that it's so important for me right now to just for her to know that like my mom's working and it she loves to work.
Yeah. 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 And tell me, how do you hold the idea of roots and stability while also offering your daughter a wide open world through the kind of life that you are living?
Yeah. Again, I feel like I'm still discovering her as a person. And I've always felt very strongly that, when I say that I'm going to US in next month and I'm tentatively going for like 3 months, but I know that like if I feel like she's not settling or she's like not enjoying or she's whatever, because you don't know how they will respond because they're changing like literally every week there are different,
Yeah.
it's a different brain. And I feel like having that flexibility to change the course if you feel this is.
Yeah.
I think for me, like the whole parenting journey has been super instinctive
Mhm.
and very gut based. And I feel that last time also, where I felt like, okay, now is the time to go, I moved my tickets and I went. It just was. It's just again very intuition based. So I feel like reading that energy,
Hmm.
that when she needs that time to explore and when she needs like her routine and like has helped me make these decisions.
Yeah.
And even we are figuring out where our roots would be, and we know for a fact that we will always have these two homes. Um, it's a call I will take in a couple of years as to how to be based in one place. I really wish, though, that this whole schooling thing, it makes me a little nervous because, the traveler in me, the nomad in me feels like, oh, will I be like married to one place for like, 10 years now? And me and my husband have spoken about like homeschooling, but we also feel that with our schedule, it's just going to
Yeah.
be impossible to do it. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of involvement, and I don't think it's going to happen unless there is an easier way for parents like to entrepreneurs to like pull this off. But I like the fact like she recently got this globe as a gift,
Mhm.
and I like this fact that like she's growing, believing like the world is her oyster already, right? Like that there is no limitation in her head. Like so she feels like yeah, US is home and Thailand is like she actually told me today that I'm missing my crib I had in Thailand. I'm missing
Oh.
Thailand home, which was a hotel. So I feel it's also till she realizes, I don't know when she'll realize it, but she felt home in Thailand and she
Yeah.
felt at home in US and then she feels
Mm.
at home in Bangalore and my hometown Akola. She also told me the other day, when are we going to Akola? I miss it, which is
Mhm.
my parents' native place. And I also feel that maybe we don't fully give credit to how plastic this brain is in terms of like just believing this. Like we believed in the idea of this is home and this is
Yeah.
where we will live for like so many years. But I also feel that she's growing up with a different idea of home, which is like a community and like that could be anywhere. And
Yeah.
for me and my husband also for the longest time it was plug and play. Like we go, we work from like home and we travel. So I don't know to answer your question on routing versus exploration. Um, we're still taking it a day at a time, and with obviously this thought that okay, around age 6, which is 3 years from now, is when we will maybe take a decision to settle if that's what comes up for us.
Yeah.
There is no template we are following, and I think that's the fun and the wild part. That I think both me and my husband are like slightly wired that way. We were two people, two cuckoo heads who dropped out of engineering in an engineering college,
Wow.
and decided to just pursue something totally different. And we both were in political consulting, where we did election campaigns in like rural areas. I feel like that's also because we liked that idea of operating when there is no template and then creating and building structures to be able to like live in that. So it's just who we are as parents and we're being
Yeah.
true to that
Yeah.
versus following a template, which I haven't been able to find, to be very honest. And I don't even
Yeah.
think a template or a playbook exists. It's just you build it along the way.
Yeah. 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 Which in all this wilderness and, building your template along the way, are there any routines or anchors or rituals that you carry with you wherever you go?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what those could be. I feel like we as as parents, as both of us, like we both somehow have this obsession with a routine.
Yeah.
And like which almost everybody in the early years of Samara told us that we were crazy. Like we were just following her routine and like prioritizing her routine and deciding flights basis her routine. Like till now, like even now, I had meetings on the third day of my visit, but then I said that, you know what, I want to take this flight because it's her nap time and it'll be easier. So let me just take this flight and I'll skip this meeting, but we'll catch up on this later. That is why I feel that's one thing that's like been constant for her. And
Mm-hmm.
she's a child who loves routine too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
also like a part of us following that lead, right?
Yeah.
Because for some kids, it's like, they don't want that and their routine could be anything. But for it actually gave us a lot of like anchoring, like our own routines and her routine. So For my husband, like, his meditation time is like sacrosanct. Like he needs that time no matter where we are, what we do, that anchors him. For me, it's like my time on the mat doing yoga is that, like, no matter where I am, it just gives me a sense of grounding. And for my daughter, it's like that routine. So she's 3 years old now, 3 years and 1 month, and in her entire life, there've been just one day of her skipping her nap, like
Wow.
not napping throughout the day, type of a thing. And we were on a boat, and she napped under a tree, like, and because we also invested in that, like, no, let her nap because she needs to. So I feel having that routine and like understanding that uh, about my daughter made her feel at home no matter where she was, because she knew what to expect around that time in a little bit. And then we both had, and someone told me this when I was pregnant, that your Vipassana and your yoga would be your two very important tools for your birthing, like, so just stay in touch with that. But I feel like it's true even for like motherhood, that you need those tools where if you are overstimulated, if you're overwhelmed, which you are a lot, I mean, so many times a day. Sometimes I um, just meditate at like 2 p.m. because I need to, because I just need to like ground myself and in the middle of my work day. And having spaces like that, I feel, is also so important for parents. And having access to those spaces is again been a game changer in our parenting journey. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
That does. And you spoke about routine. I want to understand is there a small kind of, part of that routine with Samara that feels sacred to you, that, this is my and Samara's time, and this is something that we do together?
yeah, it also keeps changing. So for example, in the last 6 to 7 months, it was this 4 p.m. time where it's not like I decided this, but she naps between 2 to 4, and like no one else will wake her up but me. And I don't trust anyone to wake her up also, because if there's nanny, she'll be like, let her sleep a little bit more, or the grandparents, they're like, let her sleep, why wake a sleeping child? But I know that for her to be in bed by 9 p.m., I need her to wake up at 4. Um, so I kind of used to go and like wake her up, and it just became like that time where she's a little drowsy, and then she'll be like so happy to see me after so many hours, because she doesn't get to see me usually between like 9 to 4.
Yeah.
So that just became like a ritual almost for the last 6 to 7 months, where I go and wake her up. No matter where I am, I actually come back, drive back home to see her at 4, in between 4 to 5. And then 5 o'clock, she goes to park with her grandparents. So that became like something that I started enjoying so much more. And I know it also will keep changing as she grows.
Yeah.
Um, we do our weekly dates. There's this one cafe that we both really like. In fact, I was just coming from there. I was there in the morning with her, and she loves it too. It's called The Kind, and she really enjoys it there. She almost feels like that cafe is my office, because I also work from there a lot. So she sometimes will tell me, Mama, let's go to your office. I want to come with you to so yeah, there are these rituals that keep changing, but I also am enjoying discovering new rituals as she's growing up and she's getting into so many new things in life.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And we are coming to an end of this conversation, but I have two more questions for you before we let you go. So, my second last question to you is, if you could speak to your pre-parent self on the cusp of all of this change, what would you want her to know?
That it's okay to not be as productive
Hmm.
as you think you used to be, you know. That's one thing I did not know. I feel like the world we live in, we define productivity a certain way. And I just like wasted so much time not feeling productive. And I feel that if that's one thing I could tell, is like like don't measure your self-worth by how productive
Mhm.
you've been today, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're doing you're in a very different stage of life, like especially these early years, will
Yeah.
be very, very different than what life otherwise look like or will look like in the future. Uh, and now that I'm realizing it, uh, I'm thoroughly enjoying motherhood, knowing that I've finally let go of this notion of this is how productive, this is what productivity means, and I've let go of that, and it took me 2 years, I guess, to completely understand and let go of that questioning or policing or measuring of like how what you've got done, how much you've got done. So that's one thing that I would tell my pre-parent self.
Beautiful. You know what this reminds me of? One of the other guests on my show, I think it was Natasha Uppal. She said that the way we define productivity is inherently patriarchal and capitalistic because we don't define it from a mother's or a woman's lens. We define it, how we measure it, how we look at it, and it just brought up so many of my own concerns about not being productive while I was mothering, up. And I think it just tells us that how do we change the measures, not just the way we are productive, but also how we measure productivity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, absolutely. In fact, I'll give you a very real example that I started this practice in pregnancy that I used to block my calendar for a nap.
Mm.
And I should tell my team that, hey, I'm pregnant, I don't sleep well at night, and I'm blocking this time, so please don't call me around this time because this is my nap slot. And I'm working from home. And it was very awkward in some conversations for people to like think. And even if I was in office, there was this medical room we had, and I used to just
Yeah.
go there and nap because I knew my body needed that. And somehow that continued postpartum, that continued even till today. That yesterday I napped in the afternoon and I blocked my time. Like I still do. I block it that I need this 45 minutes like time off. And that helps me stay more productive for the next 6 or 7 hours. But there are there are some days when you are like, okay, what did I do today? And
Yeah.
then like the first thing you remember is that the nap you took, and you somehow tend to feel a little guilty about it, right? So
Yeah.
although I've been doing it for so long and I need that rest, 30 to 45 minutes, yesterday I was like, oh my God, I just like missed doing this because around this time I was napping. And my sister told me this, that it's okay, you didn't nap at all on the weekend. And I saw that because the weekend was so hectic because I took my daughter to a birthday party, took her to the park. Like, a weekend I do all of that. And this Monday afternoon I was exhausted and I needed
Yeah.
a nap longer. And she's like, I saw, and like, you deserve that nap, an extra 30 minutes that day. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I was like obsessing over it. And I feel like this is also something that's not being spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
Um, that men can operate differently and women can operate differently. And sometimes I feel that the need to take a nap would make you look like you're not a very efficient person in office hours, right? And I tried to kind of be very vocal about it, that I need it. And I also knew it got very mixed reactions
Yeah.
for some reason, because maybe as a professional, it doesn't reflect very well on you that you are like taking this time off. But then this is how I think if you're not being authentic enough to be able to say that out, and this is also a part of the plan of how you can be more productive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that 30 to 45 minutes of downtime is making me productive in so many ways where I have energy to do a workout in the evening sometimes, or I have the energy to kind of do the park time with my daughter if I need to, or like do the extend work hours after she sleeps sometimes. Because that we don't you know
Count.
count that, hey, I was actually working, I was actually taking calls from the US of US clients at like 11 p.m. sometimes.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's where we as women we need to also understand, maybe we are different biologically
Yes.
how men would operate. And to your point on the whole patriarchy and how patriarchal, I feel like 9 to 5 is extremely patriarchal.
Yes.
I do not think I can operate like that. That was one of the reasons I did not continue to be in a corporate setup, because I'm like, I'm very productive from 6 a.m. to like 9 a.m. in so many
Yes.
ways. But I also need my 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for my workouts.
Yeah.
And I need my 5 p.m. out in the evening, like, just to like change that zone. But I also am productive. I can do calls like late at night. I realized that my day was looking very different
Yeah.
if I was choosing to design it basis how I think I can work well
Yeah.
versus what the expectation was from a certain system, which is what could feel patriarchal, could feel very capitalist. But I feel like we need to take charge of how we want to work to be able to be happy and actually give our best,
Yeah.
which is what matters. Like, I feel at the end of the day, I sleep well knowing that I gave my best today,
Yeah.
no matter what it looked like to anybody else.
Yeah.
I sleep well knowing that I gave my best.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. And finally, what do you hope your daughter feels most deeply when she looks back on her childhood?
I just want her to have fun. And I think that's what I optimize for in life. And I want, like, it's, it could sound very meta, but it's actually just like a game we're all playing. It's you're meant to have fun, you're meant to enjoy this. And I think looking back, if she can say this, that like I had fun, like I had a lot of fun, that would make me like, just like that, I would feel that okay, I have done my job. And it's fun and play is such an important part of our lives that in modern world there's lesser and lesser time for that. Even as adults, we sometimes think that fun is for the weekends, and I feel like that's such a wrong idea,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to have, I mean, I honestly am enjoying our conversation. So for me, this is my idea of fun, and I'm sure you
Yeah.
do this because this is your idea of fun too.
Yeah.
The more our kids see us have fun with work, I feel like we also bring that energy into our conversations with them. And which is why I feel motherhood is such a transformation, like for a
Yeah.
lot of people, because your idea of why you're working and your priorities, like, it sounds very cliched, but it just gets anchored to something that's a value that you sometimes feel maybe was missing for you as a
Yeah.
child, and you want to see that in your child, like, your kid's childhood, or it's something that you have an aspiration for yourself. So I feel that, to me, it's been health as a recurring theme,
Hmm.
that I want to work in the space. I'm married to this sector for the next decade or two or three, and I want her to focus on her own health and I focus on having fun. And if that's what she's doing, I think like I've done my job as a parent.
Wonderful, wonderful. Supriya, thank you for sharing your story so openly about everything about motherhood, ambition, distance, faith, and community. I just loved having you here, and I can't thank you enough for being so open and vulnerable with us.
Thank you so much. And like I shared in the beginning of our conversation, like I'm operating on 4 hours of sleep. So I hope, like, what I said makes sense to a lot of people who are hearing this. But I also feel like thanks to you, because you've also made it so easy for me to be vulnerable in this conversation. So a lot of gratitude. And I really hope more and more people around us, parents around us, talk about their journeys, because I have drawn a lot of strength from women I have seen and I've spoken to, and they've deeply
Yeah,
influenced me. And I think like the only one image I have of me as a parent is like I want to be a relaxed parent, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that was a goal all throughout. And it's so hard to find examples of that around you for you to be able to sort of know how to do it, right? So I really think that the conversations you're having are extremely important for a lot of us to learn from. And I look forward to watching and listening to a lot more conversations that you're having in parenthood.
Thank you. Thank you, Supriya. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. Follow Parenthood, leave us a review if you can, and keep these conversations alive. Until next time, this is Neha Garg signing off. Bye bye.